The Chicago Bears just got an absolute gift from the NFL. Hi, everyone. I'm Andy here with Chicago Bears React, bringing you all of the Chicago Bears news you're seeking during the season and now here in the offseason. If you guys wouldn't mind doing me a favor, please take a moment, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Really helps out the channel. If you like the video, please leave a comment, engage. I always check the comments. I'll always respond. And it's a helpful way for me to just get a sense for what kind of content I should make next. So for today's story, we're going to look at some exciting news, something that I think has gone under the radar for a lot of Bears fans. And that is that the NFL raised the salary cap by $30 million. Why is this a big deal? Well, it's a big deal because the estimates that a lot of the NFL has, a lot of the teams and the media have been operating under were significantly lower than that 30 million, which means some of these past videos where I've talked about, this is probably about the amount of cap space the Bears will have. Those are no longer accurate. They're going to have more. They're going to have more to play with. And in fact, if we take a look at Spotrac right now, the Bears are slated, they're in the number 4 spot here. They're slated to have somewhere around $82 million. Actually, essentially $83 million. And there could still be cuts coming. There could be restructuring of contracts. If Justin gets traded, that's going to save you a few $1 million. So I think when this is all said and done, the Bears all of a sudden have an exciting amount of money to spend. One thing that we had looked at, here's a tweet from Nick Whalen, where he kind of broke down like what it actually means. We looked at this on a previous video, and this was under the assumption that we would have about $70 million to spend. And so, when you factor in, you got to sign your draft picks, the franchise tag for Jalen Johnson, which that number is now going to be more like $19 million because of all the additional cap. The franchise tag numbers are higher. $6 million in in-season roster moves, $5 million for the practice squad. So he estimated here, the Bears are probably looking at like $26 million for free agency. That number is probably now more like $38-40 million. So let's talk about that, because there's a lot of interesting avenues we could go. And, so what are the big needs the Bears have? We've talked about it quite a bit. They need a center. I've said time and time again, this is the most critical position the Bears have a gap at. They do not have a center. They really need a center. That's going to cost you probably at least $6 million, would be my guess. They need a couple of wide receivers. I think they're going to take one in the top 10. The more I look at this, the more you hear what the experts are saying. There are several experts who believe if you took out positional value, the 3 best prospects in this draft are all wide receivers. And the Bears have a great chance to get one of them. So we talked about Rome Odunze in a previous video. Take a look in the description if you want to link to that video. But, that's one of those 3 guys. And I think they're going to solve that wide receiver 2 position there. I don't think they're going to do that in free agency. I also think they could double dip in the draft and take a day 3 wide receiver to maybe play wide receiver 3. So we'll kind of see what happens there. But they could decide, hey, we want to go after Odunze and we want to maybe sign Calvin Ridley. It wouldn't seem like necessarily the best practice, but it's a possibility, and that's something they could do. But my guess is they're going to do the wide receiver more on the cheap. They need a tight end too. This is an important thing in this offense. The Bears can't run it back with Robert Tonyan. I don't think he won anybody over this past season. I don't think he was particularly effective. And now he doesn't have Luke Getsy there as his security blanket. So I think that's probably a position that you could potentially draft day 3. I could also see them maybe seeing if they could find a tight end 2 for like another $4 or $5 million. I think the other position, they need a running back. I think my guess is they'll draft one. They need probably an additional guard because I don't really trust Tevin Jenkins to be able to play, all those games. So this is where like the situation I think is quite possibly on the table is the Bears sign a veteran center and then draft an interior lineman who can play both center and guard with the hope that that's your center of the future. But you also then have them, like, they don't have to immediately go into the NFL and be a starting center. They could kind of work their way up, get in NFL shape, and they could be that. Because ultimately, like, you can only have so many guys on the roster, and if you can have an interior lineman that can play all three of those positions, well, now that eliminates the need for another on your roster, right? So you have that player. So I suspect that's the route they're probably going to go. So right now, as I can see it, I think maybe on that offensive side, you're going to spend 10, 12 million in free agency at most. That would be my guess. On the defensive side, you have essentially two big needs. You need another pass rusher, and you need a safety. And the safety you can get for probably $5-6 million. Safeties are not hard to find. You could also draft one. But let's assume they spend the $5-6 million. Now all of a sudden you're in a situation where you still have like $20+ million to allocate toward a pass rusher. Which brings me to something that came up in the press conferences the other day. Eric Washington, the new defensive coordinator, made a statement that he wants to build the best pass rush in the NFL, and he wants Montez Sweat to be the foundation. It's a bold statement. There's some incredible pass rush teams out there, and the Bears don't have a second pass rusher. And as was pointed out on Twitter by James Fox, new Bears defensive coordinator Eric Washington sounded like a man who knows another pass rusher is coming. And to me, this is probably the biggest the biggest move I could see the Bears making this offseason. We've talked before on this channel specifically about the possibility of Danielle Hunter coming over from Minnesota. Danielle can't be franchise tagged. He's going to be available. He is a stud pass rusher. And the Bears, it's been widely reported that the Bears have already shown interest in getting him. So, interesting. I mentioned previously that I was skeptical of that happening because I didn't see how the math worked unless you were going to make some significant contract restructures and find a way to free up additional cap. Now you look at this and you're like, that could be possible. So now one thing we all have to keep in mind is it's not like the Bears are the only one who just got this gift. Every team just got this gift. And so you're probably looking at a little bit of a contract inflation this year, right? So everybody has that additional money to spend, which means you might have to throw a little bit more to get guys. Because now there might have been 3 teams going after Danielle Hunter, and now there might be 5 because they're like, hey, we got the money. And so now it's like instead of being able to offer 25, maybe it's got to be 30. That's the difficult thing, and so we'll see. But again, not everything has to be solved in free agency. In fact, it's not good practice in general to try to solve your roster holes in free agency. I really hope we draft a wide receiver. I really hope we draft an interior lineman. I really hope we draft a safety, a running back. You can address these needs. You're not necessarily going to hit on all of them, but you can if you trust your scouting. And let's be honest, I think Ryan Poles and his team have proven to be very effective at drafting. You're better off doing that, getting young guys, getting them trained, getting them to learn your system, your way of football, your culture, and not spending money on players that their former teams don't want enough to retain, right? And so, because that's the thing we always have to keep in mind. There's always a reason these guys are available, and very rarely is it because of something good. It's kind of like the Shane Waldron situation where we talked about, like, it's rare to find an offensive coordinator who's just available to now be your offensive coordinator. He was in a very unique situation where the head coach moved on, and so now it's kind of like, I need a new job. So he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't fail in Seattle. He was just available. And that does happen with players. Sometimes you get a TJ Edwards kind of situation. But oftentimes, you're more likely to get a Robert Tonyan than you are a TJ Edwards, if we're being honest. And so free agency is a little bit of a mixed bag. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments. As I said, I always check. I'm always happy to engage, and would love to hear from you all on kind of how you think the Bears should spend this money. So thanks so much for watching, Bears fans, and as always, bear down.